everyone. So today I'll be your host for this session, for this Tech Academy session. I will be presenting the data isolation strategies with Adobe Experience Platform. And I'll be accompanied with Paul, who will take the question on the chat pod. Before that, if you want to view the other Tech Academy sessions that happened in the past, you can watch them on the Experience Maker YouTube channel. So that's a nice way to catch up also if you miss one of them. Okay. So I'd like to discuss with you how to best create data isolation strategies with Adobe Experience Platform. First, a few words of introduction. So I'm Clément Delalande, and I am an enterprise architect for Adobe. And today, we want to share the feedbacks that we have when we were discussing with prospects and customers about data isolations and how to cater for their organization model with Adobe Experience Platform. So by the end of this session, you will get a detailed understanding on the pros and cons of each data isolation model that we can support with Platform. So first of all, when we discuss with our customers, we see two main kinds of challenges that they face. So the first one is legal requirements that force big organizations to keep their data clearly separated across brands and markets. And the other challenge that they have is find a good way to mutualize their marketing efforts and avoid redoing the same configuration over and over again. So when we start discussion with our customers, we have like 4 key aspects to take into consideration. And that's basically what this pyramid shows. So first of all, the data residency would be one of the key criteria to take into account in order to best determine what would be your data isolation strategy. So the question that you have to answer here is where to host my customer data with respect to privacy laws. And that will directly guide you to the region where your AEP instance will be located. An AEP instance can be in one data center that is in one region. If there are certain needs for hosting data to US, for example, or EMEA, it's also possible to create a second instance of Adobe Experience Platform in a different data center. But those two data centers will remain fully isolated from each other. And that's our first level of isolations that we can support. Then, of course, we will have to discuss operating models. So a company, an organization usually have different line of business, different markets to address, or different brands. And we need to be able to fit that model into Adobe Experience Platform. And this will also provide a second level of isolation. And we will see what strategy to put in place in order to manage that. The third aspect to take into account is the people and the processes. So what are the permissions I should grant to my marketing operators? What kind of data should they manage? What kind of data they can view? This will be directly useful to build their audiences or their customer journeys. And we will also be able, through like role-based access control, to isolate subset of data based on the permission that we want to grant to your marketing team. Finally, the fourth aspect is the data governance. How can I ensure that my customer data, are activated in a privacy-safe manner? Here again, we will have some strategies to isolate data from activation so that we comply with the customer consent. I won't talk too much about data governance in this session because that will be part of the next Tech Academy. Okay. Here, I'd like to also share with you the first operating model that we commonly see with our brands. Okay, I hope you can still see my screen because here it changed. But the first operating model that we see is the central marketing team, where basically we have one global marketing team that can manage all the campaigns for our customers. So whether they are based in the US, in EMEA, or in APAC, actually, this is the same marketing teams that will run all the campaigns worldwide. So here I took Luma as a fictitious company to explain this operating model, where they have three different markets to address. But the principle that prevails for Luma here is that data sharing is more important than data isolation, which means they want to put all the data into one single data store and run their marketing campaigns from that. And it's up to the marketing team to apply the right segmentation criteria to build their audiences to address either the US market, the EMEA, or the APAC one. Of course, there's no brand or market isolation, but everything is done from a centralized manner, which means it's a one-size-fits-all model. It's super efficient because you have just one configuration of Adobe Experience Platform to deploy, and then you can address your customers worldwide. Of course, it implies that everything runs on top of the same data model, so you may adjust slightly the data model to address some specific geo needs, but most of the model will be shared with those different geos. It's also very important for data-driven companies to adopt this model because they can benefit from all the customer interactions that happen across the different geos into one single location, so that they have one data store where they can build their reporting, their customer journey analysis with customer journey analytics, for example. And this will also give them like an overview of how their campaign operate worldwide. So this is also very beneficial if they want to take data-driven decision to improve their marketing strategy over time. So we find this kind of model for companies that makes their business on the internet. Everything is standardized. They share processes to address their different line of business or different geos. So that's very efficient. Of course, it does not fit well for companies that have maybe a longer history, that have been created and then that acquired other company over the time. And those kind of companies mostly adopt a distributed management model where they have different teams to address different brands, different line of business, or different geos. And here, if we still take the example of Luma, we have local teams, such as the teams in the US or a team in EMEA or in APAC that address their customer base. So the segmentation and the activation is distributed over those three teams. And the principle that prevails here is the data isolation, which means we don't want to share any kind of data between the US partition and the EMEA one. It provides more flexibility because we can have customized data model for each of those geos. And it gives also more power to the local teams because they have more control about the kind of data they can collect and the data that they can activate. And this does not have any impact on the other geos. Of course, flexibility comes with a specific cost as well that has to be taken in order to create that data isolation strategy. One thing to keep into consideration here is that if you have, for example, John Doe, who is a customer in the US, and if John Doe makes some purchases in EMEA, then you will end up with two different records, two different representation of the same customer. One record will live in the US partition, and another record will live in the EMEA partition, which means that two different representation of the same customer, but this is by design because you want to keep data clearly isolated across your geos. Finally, that leads us to a third operating model, which is the center of excellence. This is an adaptation of the distributed marketing management model, where we want to mutualize some effort in a center of excellence. So basically, we have this specific center of excellence that create baseline configurations that could be schemas that should be deployed across the different units of the company, that can be campaigns or journeys that are standardized that you want to share across your different teams. But you want still, sorry for that, you want still keep a high degree of data isolation by market or line of business. So here, the principle that prevails is that data is an asset. You want to have full flexibility on your data, but you still want to be able to capitalize on your data. And that's why the Center of Excellence is also the unit that will consolidate all your customers' interaction in order to provide a global view of what's happening in your different partition of your company. It has a main advantage. You can reduce some cost because you are like sharing standardized configuration made by the Center of Excellence. But in the meantime, you can still provide a level of flexibility to accommodate each of the geo needs. And that's a model that we commonly see in FSI industries that have to comply with regulation that have to keep the data clearly separated from each other. But in the meantime, they want to promote best practices across the different brands of the company, and that's why they came up with that Center of Excellence. Okay, now from an architecture standpoint, when we want to transcribe those models with Adobe Experience Platform, we will be able to play in different dimensions. So the first dimension that I explained before is the platform instance that lives in a single Azure data center. We call that an organization. And once you have an organization ID, you are able to deploy multiple partitions. So in case of a centralized data management approach, you will have your permission layer where you will define your users, your resource, and basically that constitutes your role-based access control. And that permission layer will let you give access to users into a specific partition. So a partition is an independent set of platform resource, which means that within a partition, you will find different resources such as profile store, such as specific schemas that you want to build to represent your business and your customers. You will have your specific journeys, your specific offer library, and everything will live into that global partition. And this is up to your marketing team to leverage those assets in order to build your customer experiences. So with that approach, you will have, for example, the 3 different websites that will be used to collect the data, and everything will land into that global partition. Same applies for the enterprise sources. So let's say you have a content management platform or different enterprise sources that are used to collect your customer data. Well, those data will also land into that global partition, and then the marketing team will process this data to build the right audiences, the right segments, and push those to the different activation channels. So this is very centralized, very powerful, very cost efficient, and easy to maintain. Of course, if you want to provide an additional layer of isolation for your data, you would need to build multiple partitions. And still, here we are going to leverage the platform permission model to create specific roles that will give access to a subset of your user to only one partition. So in this case, let's say I create a role for the US, and only my US marketing team will access the US partition. And everything that is happening within that partition will be isolated from the other partitions. So I'm able to create multiple partitions to cater for my needs. Here I took the example of 3 partitions to represent 3 different geos, but it can be as far as 75 different partitions that we can accommodate within one instance of Adobe Experience Platform. So this is more than enough to accommodate even the biggest organizations. With that approach, we have separate data stores, separate schema definition within each partition, and everything that is happening in the US won't affect what's happening in EMEA or in APAC. So everything is working totally independent from each other. Something to keep into consideration is that we are multiplying the data flows with this approach, because we will have all the consents and the enterprise sources that have to hydrate the 3 partitions. So instead of having 1 data flow for the consent, we would have 3 data flows for consent, 1 for the US, 1 for the EMEA, 1 for APAC. Okay? So this is more costly, of course, because the setup is a bit more important. But we have some ways to mitigate that effort through the use of packages, and this is something that I will share with you afterward. One thing to keep in mind as well is for some specific cases where we can, we have some, for example, cross-sell scenarios where we want to activate data for customers that would live in both partitions, we are still able to use an out-of-the-box feature of Adobe Experience Platform that is called segment sharing. And here it lets you determine if the overlap of population is important enough to share an audience from one partition to another. In that case, the mechanism is provided out of the box in a secure manner so that you can share data, if that's worth it, across your different partitions. Okay, I'm continuing with the last model that we discussed, the Center of Excellence. So here we would still have 3 different partitions to address our different geos, with their respective data flows to collect data and to activate data. But on top of that, we would have a specific partition that will be used for the Center of Excellence. Here, the Center of Excellence is responsible for 2 different things. So, it's responsible for managing baseline configuration, templates, and audiences. And this configuration will then be packaged and easily deployed across those different partitions. So the Center of Excellence is responsible for building those packages with all the best practice that they have, and then they can share in a standardized manner those packages with the different units. On the way back, the different partitions will fuel the Center of Excellence with all the data sets. So through dataset export mechanism, for example, we can easily share data across partitions. And this will be useful to build customer journey analysis, to build reporting as well. If you want to have like a global view of everything that is happening worldwide into one single partition, this is the way to go. And this is also especially useful if you want to run AI models. So with Adobe Experience Platform, we have intelligence services that lets you calculate propensity scores or attrition scores. And the more data you get, the better your scores are. So it's really important to capitalize on all the data that you have collected in one single location to have better AI models. Okay, so let me switch to a platform user interface. Here, I am connected as an admin in my org, So if I belong to multiple orgs, I can easily switch from one org to another, and those orgs are totally isolated from each other. And within one organization, I can create multiple partitions. In this case, I'm working on my demo partition. And if I want to create specific partitions, I can do that through the self-service user interface. So a partition in Adobe Experience Platform is called a sandbox. I can browse the different sandboxes because I am an admin. I can create a new sandbox if I want to. So let's create a Tech Academy sandbox. I can give it a type, so it's either development or production. The main difference between the two is the resources allocated. Production sandbox would have more resources than a development one. And once I've done that, I just have to hit the create button and my sandbox will be set up. So here, the name has to be unique. So I will just name it Tech Academy 2. And once this is done, I can directly look at the sandbox. It has been created in a few seconds. It's already active, which means if I have some test to run, I can easily bootstrap a sandbox, do some testing, reset the sandbox to perform another set of testing, or I can even delete the sandbox if I don't need it. And this frees up the resources for other use cases. So let's say tomorrow I have a new geo to cover or a new line of business. I can easily bootstrap a sandbox in this manner. And then with that sandbox, I will be able to easily import packages. So to import a package, it's very straightforward. You can click on this button, and then you select the package that you want to import and the sandbox to where the package should be deployed. And once you click next, you will see all the different objects that are part of my package, as well as the dependencies that are automatically included within those objects. So let's say that I want to deploy a specific customer journey to my newly created sandbox. Well, the package management system will automatically include the schemas and the audience that are dependent of my journey. So this is super useful. And if I want to add something to my package, it's also super easy because I just have to browse my object in my platform user interface, and just clicking the Add to Package button gives me the option to either create a new package or add my object to a specific package. And here again, I can easily create a new package. Sorry, I need to check this one. And then I can click Add. So the process itself is super easy. And I can do that for schemas. I can also add data flows if I want. Let's say that I want to import this Google BigQuery data flow to my newly created sandbox. I can just click Add to Package, and then in an incremental manner, I will enrich my package details. Let's say now that I want to give access to my Tech Academy sandbox to a subset of users. I will do so through the permission user interface. In this user interface, I will have access to roles, and I can create roles. I can modify already existing roles. And here for this Tech Academy, I've created a specific role where I can give access to platform resources. So let's say that I want to give access to this Tech Academy sandbox. I can select the sandbox I've just created here, and then I will select among all the different resources that I have, the ones that I want to allow my users to use. So let's say I want to give them access to data management so that they can build their own schemas, they manage their own data sets. I can manage either read permission, which translates to view in the permission model, and write permission, which translates to manage. So here I can add both. I can do the same if I want to give access to journeys. I have a set of resources that I can directly add as part of my role to determine exactly who can access what within the platform. And once that is done, the user that will be added to my role, once they log in, will land directly into this newly created sandbox, Tech Academy 2, and they will be able to play only with a subset of platform capabilities. I'd like also to mention an additional level of isolation that we can provide within one sandbox. And this is called role-based data access. So let's imagine that you want to stick with only one sandbox to manage all of your journeys and audiences worldwide. Within that sandbox, you will be able to create multiple roles that will provide an additional layer of isolation so that you can say only the US marketing operators can activate data that corresponds to US residents. And in this case, you would have multiple roles sharing the same partition, but each role will work only on a subset of data. Of course, you can build transverse roles, such as like a marketing manager that will have visibility over US, EMEA, and APAC. This is also possible. But the thing to keep into consideration is that you will provide only visibility to a subset of data according to your role definition. Of course, it implies that your customer data are flagged to only be available for one geo. So let's say you have a Jundo user that should only be visible for the US role. In this case, you would have a specific profile attribute that will mention this user should only be activated to US. And basically, this is a policy, a data access policy that will enforce the visibility of profile attributes in journeys and in audience. And this will also prevent wrong activation of US data to EMEA campaigns, for example. So the main benefit is that you can manage multiple geos into one single partition. And you can also manage or restrict, data access on personal and sensitive data. So let's say that you have a subcontractor, for example, or a digital agency that manage some of your campaigns, and you don't want to expose personal data in those campaigns. Well, you can directly, through the use of roles, filter out sensitive or personal data so that they are not taken into account for segmentation and activation purpose. So this is super useful as well to segregate data within one partition. And so in that case, you provide also a way for manager to have one central partition to work on multiple geos. And this is also like a nice intermediate approach between centralized data management and distributed data management. So to do that within platform, we use what we call access policies. And this is basically verify that your role, as it is defined in the permission UI, has the right label to work with the data. So as an example, the EMEA role will view and use profile attributes, offers, audiences, journeys, or basically any object in platform that is labeled with, in this case, the EMEA only label. And this approach lets you manage a hierarchy of role. And so, for example, if tomorrow you have to build a manager role, that has access to the 3 geos, you can easily do so by adding 3 different labels. Okay. So how does that translate in the platform? Within the platform, if I go back to my permission user interface, here I have an EMEA marketing role, and within that role, I can create labels. So in my case, I already created an EMEA only data label, and this label will basically tell Adobe Experience Platform to only show to Lisa Miller, that is the EMEA campaign manager, to work only with EMEA data. And the role itself will be managed directly by the policy. You can see in this instance, I have a default access policy that is active. I can deactivate it if I don't want to use it. But this access policy will basically ensure that the connected operator is part of a role that has a label associated with a specific resource. Okay. How to tag a resource with a label? That is easy as well. You can do that by just clicking on your schema, your audience, or your data set, for example. And within that schema, you can determine the kind of data that will be available to your EMEA role. So here, for example, I have some specific individual characteristics for EMEA and some other for the US. And I want to only give access to the EMEA team to that specific data node. And to do so, I can apply the label in my schema. Applying a label is easy because once you selected your data points, you can just click on Apply Access and Data Governance label and select the label that has been previously created by an admin in order to restrict the visibility of the data. And so if we look now at audiences that have been previously tagged, so here I am connected as an admin, and you can see I can see multiple different Luma audiences. Some are tagged to be US only. Some other are tagged to be EMEA only. And some other are not tagged at all, which means if they are not tagged, everybody can see them. Okay. Now, if I switch to Lisa Miller, who is my EMEA marketing manager, she will only be able to see audiences that have been tagged with EMEA label. So that limits the set of audiences available for a given role, and that fits our purpose here. Okay. So now, if I want to summarize the different approaches that we have discussed, so I classified them in this quadrant using 2 different parameters. First one is the organization complexity. So what are the governance rules that are already in place in my organization that I should support, and what kind of data isolation level I should take into consideration in the platform. And the second parameter is the cost implied to support this complexity. And we have discussed the shared resource model with the centralized marketing team approach, which is maybe the less costly and that fits well for organizations that does not have strong security requirements in terms of data isolation. This is particularly adapted for internet for companies, that make their business on the internet and that address audience worldwide. The second one is this distributed one, which is a bit more costly to implement because you have to cater with multiple different configuration, and you have to take into account the maintenance associated with those different partitions. But that fits well for FSI industries, for example, that have to keep that data clearly isolated from each other. The third one, the center of excellence, is a nice intermediate approach because it gives you a high level of flexibility with different partitions, but in the meantime, it gives you a way to standardize your configuration and customer journeys with a center of excellence. So that fits well also for big organizations. You have, of course, to have that center of excellence already available in your organization in order to have that fully beneficial. And finally, the fourth one and the intermediate approach between centralized and distributed is the role-based data access, which provide some degree of data isolation within one partition. And it's an interesting approach if you have slight differences between your units to support, but it may not be that adapted for like 10 or more than 10 different configurations. So you have to find the right balance between the cost and the complexity of your governance in order to choose the appropriate data model. Also, you may start with a centralized approach, and when the company grows and evolves, you may switch to a distributed approach, and this is easily doable thanks to the use of self-service portal to build your own or to create your own sandboxes so that your model is not rigid. You can easily adapt to your company by adding new sandboxes on the way and evolve from a centralized approach to a distributed one, and why not to a center of excellence afterward. Okay. And so if we close the loop with our 4 key considerations from the beginning, we have seen that we can answer the data residency question through the use of different tenants and choose the right region to host each of those platform instances. And within one instance, you can cater different operating models through the use of multiple partitions, up to 75, remember. So it's important to know the level of flexibility that it can provide to cater for all those different operating models. Third consideration, the access management. We have seen that we could cover that through the role definition that lets you associate a user and platform resources in a role in order to exactly decide who should access what and to what kind of data they can use for activation and segmentation purpose. And finally, the last one, the policy management, is also super important to take into consideration to not activate data that should not be consented by your customers. So checking those 4 boxes will provide you with a robust model to cater for your data isolation strategy. And I hope this presentation has been useful for you.